Okay, let's talk about being seen. As someone who has probably struggled with being seen my whole life, and because it wasn't safe or it wasn't fun or I just didn't know how it looked to be seen, I would love to hear your perspective on like what it was like to be seen for you throughout your life or your first time or as you got into your business.
So I'll never forget, before my current business, I was a personal trainer, and I really wanted to make a massive impact. Back in the day, even, I was like, I want to be YouTube famous. I want to reach the masses. Like, I always had this burning thing inside of me to really reach a lot of people. And at that time, that's what I did. But I was really scared. I will never forget this time when I recorded my first video on my phone, actually, my very first like talking video, I think, that I posted on Instagram. This was like probably not even up there anymore because this was like so long ago. It was like over 10 years ago, maybe. And I remember thinking, man, I wish I was more confident and clear with my delivery and the way that I felt on camera. And I just knew that if I kept doing things like that, things that got me out of my comfort zone, that I would build the confidence. And so I started getting out of my comfort zone intentionally when it came to being seen. This was, I'm talking back in the day. I was teaching fitness classes, or I started teaching fitness classes, which was another layer of being seen, which really freaked me out because I would go through, I'm not bubbly enough. Like, I don't know if I have it in me to lead a class. Grew up shy. Like, I was a shy, quiet, mute girl. So I intentionally went and did the classes. I intentionally did fitness competitions because I just wanted to just get over the fear of being on stage half naked and doing all of that. So I intentionally did things to get me out of my comfort zone. That's the best thing that I could say in what helped me get comfortable being seen and putting myself out there. That was at the very, very beginning. And then it evolved into, what it looks like in my now business, like going on videos and all of that. There's a lot of phases of it.
So would you say being exposing yourself over and over and over again, it really brought down the level of maybe anxiety in your body or the charge that you felt around being seen?
Yes. And it really, I guess everyone's different. Everyone has their own journey. For me, it happened in layers. That was one of the first layers of being seen.
Okay.
And then I started my now brand and started my Facebook group that blew up. And I was really seen when that happened. And I actually was like, oh shit, I gotta really, this is happening. But at that point, I had grown enough to be very comfortable putting myself out there and sharing my stories. I've been doing it for so long. But when it came to live video for the first time, live video, another layer of that came up. And I was so nervous, I was shaking. And then I had to remind myself that the more you do something, the better you get, the more confidence you build. And so it's happened in layers. And even more recently on my journey, I think about how can I be even more me, more bold and just real and authentic. I always am, but we're also always growing. And so we're not the same person we were last year. So maybe there is more you want to share, or maybe you want to shift directions or whatever and be seen in a different way. So that's my experience.
What would you say to someone who, like me, who maybe me 6 months ago or me a year ago, however you want to say it, when I first came to Austin and I was yes, things were happening and things were beautiful and everything, but there was still a little bit of hesitation in terms of really putting myself out there. It's you want it, but it's not quite you haven't jumped yet. What would you say to someone like that?
Well, I'm just reflecting on your journey, and it's kind of interesting because you are so fucking good at what you do. You're so gifted and you've been doing this for so long. So it was actually really surprising for me to even hear that you were scared to you show up bigger. Yeah. What would I say to someone where you were, and it didn't even take long, you were in blow up season. Well, I think that and I've worked with a lot of people at different stages of their journey. And I think that what I would say, or I would probably guide you through some things to support you in like recognizing yourself and your gifts. That's one of my gifts, is really seeing the gifts in other people. And just like you mentioned before we even recorded this, when you're seen in your gifts, you start to own them more and be like, oh shit, like I am good at this. And so that's what I do for people. I think that's like my thing. And the more you could start to see yourself, then the more comfortable you'll be with showing up. I mean, there's a lot more that goes into it, but I would start there in recognizing you and your freaking magic and gifts, and pointing out things that would be helpful to other people that you serve and support, and, you know, being excited about that and infusing some extra confidence within you to share it. I still do that for you.
Still do. Well, I think it's funny that you said like you were surprised even with me, where you're like, what do you mean you can't like see yourself? Because I feel like that's a big part of like everybody's journey, no matter like how much money you make or what level you're on, or like if you've been in business for 10 years, it's like that still comes up no matter what income level you are, of like recognizing this next version of you. So I guess a question I have is like, what do you feel like, no matter like if I'm like a newbie, you know, entrepreneur, or if I've been in business and I've been in CEO mode or whatever it is, like what do you see as a like common thread through everyone that they're going through?
There's a few common threads.
Okay.
The first one, I think that a lot of people are afraid to say what they really want to say or be bold and direct because of fear of judgment. So the first one is basically all around fear of rejection. And that looks like people pleasing, fear of being judged or not accepted, or whatever. So it's all like laced up into fear of rejection, which is a core wound for most humans. And so that is like, that's one of the main things that either stops people from showing up to begin with, or makes them procrastinate, or they're showing up, but they're still watering down their message. They're showing up, but they really want to talk about this one thing that they haven't fully talked about. I've actually worked with people who, this one client comes to mind, that like she created a network, like a huge network marketing business brand for herself, was doing amazing. She already was making 6 figures, all that jazz. But she still felt like she was tiptoeing. Nobody else would know, but she did. On the inside, felt like she was tiptoeing around things. And so we worked through some of that, and she really wanted to share more of her spiritual side and venture out into more of her own stuff. And so that's the first theme of fear of rejection. The second thing that is a theme, and this is what you talk about a lot, is that so many people have just taken on a lot of shoulds and things that they've been taught that they need to do in their business in order to create the success and the impact and the abundance. You need to do it this way. You need to make sure this, if you're doing this, you're doing it wrong. Like there's so much noise, and the bro marketing, you know, you love talking about that too. And so all of that has like stifled a lot of people's expression, has caused a lot of feminine entrepreneurs to just ignore their intuition or second guess themselves or doubt.
Yeah.
And that actually waters down your message a lot. It makes you overthink things, and it restricts your channel. And so those are like the two main themes, and a big part of what I support people with in Star Power too, is like the inner work of, you know, healing the rejection wounds and all of that, and like following what they're natural at, and doing it in the way that feels really good for them, doing business in a way that feels really good for them, sharing their message in a way that feels really good for them, and opening their voice so they're not freaking tiptoeing around what they really want to say.
Well, you said when you were talking about the rejection, the first thread, right? You said, you know, with your client, you were able to like get in there and we worked on some things. Like, what were some of the things that you worked on, and like, what did you do? For
that particular instance, Well, a lot of stuff, when I do like the deep inner work, we do a lot of like quantum timeline journeying, quantum healing stuff. So we get to the core of where that may have come from and release that and get the lessons and do some subconscious work. Another thing was just getting really, like, supporting her with getting clear about the person she's talking to, the people she's talking to. I think a lot of people, this fear of rejection, like, you're thinking about people who don't even matter anyway. Like, you're not talking to the people who don't want your stuff or who don't care about your message. You're talking to people who do.
Yeah.
And so just getting extra clear about like her ideal, dream people, doing the inner work, the quantum healing, the subconscious reprogramming, and giving her some practices to do for herself to tune into her intuition was really helpful. And which is, of course, really helpful for all of us to tune into our own intuition. And when we can quiet our mind and tune in and really connect ourselves in that way, in combination with like the other inner work, it really supports us in transcending like these limitations or these things that come up. It really all comes back to self-love. Like, I know it sounds cliche, but fear of rejection, it's really you're scared of rejection, but really you reject yourself when you're scared of rejection. Because I learned this through relationships more than anything, is like when you're afraid of rejection, you end up molding yourself into someone else for other people, and in turn rejecting yourself. And so it really all comes back to you and the love that you have for yourself and the space that you're able to hold for yourself. It's not about anyone else.
Well, yeah, because you're not claiming who you are and being like, this is who I am, take it or leave it.
Exactly.
Like, it's that type of energy instead of the like, oh, well, I need to like mold myself to somebody and like that type of thing.
Yeah. And this was a huge thing for me too. All of this stuff, this is why I do what I do. Like, I've had to learn through experience, and the rejection thing was like a huge aha moment, or the fear of not being accepted. I mean, it stemmed back from when I was little, like my brother in school. And, I think because I have that awareness, it's really easy to support other people through stuff like that too, and where it comes from and how to shift it.
Yeah. Well, and like when you see people, or like even you can even use me as an example if you want, when it like clicks, when it finally like settles in and they finally like embrace their star power, or like, they step into it, blow up season, right? Like, what does that look like? What have you experienced? What have you seen? Whether you could like use me as an example, use whoever, any of your clients, but what are some of those things that you see like click into place?
I have another client that comes to mind actually for this, because this is a perfect example. She was in one of my programs in the past, where we go into a lot of the stuff that we do in Star Power too. And she came to me. She already had her business going. She was already showing up, doing amazing. But she was working with a coach that was teaching her how to do like evergreen, this and that. And she was stressing the fuck out about it.
Yeah, been there.
And I talked her through, okay, all right, you already know a lot of strategies. When I was talking to her, you already know a lot of strategies. You've already been in the game for a hot minute. If you could do this in any way that feels so freaking fun, like, what would that look like? And she said, oh, well, I would probably do this masterclass, or I'd probably do it in this Facebook group and run it this way. And I said, well, what is stopping you from actually doing that? Because you think you need to follow this thing that so-and-so said because you thought that was going to be the answer or whatever, but she was stressing out about it. And so we actually had to work through that for a little bit. It took her a minute to let it go. It was probably like a month.
Yeah.
And it really took her to let it, she was clinging on to like, I need to do it this way, even though we talked a lot. And finally she like let go, and she's like, all right, I'm going to just experiment with this and do it my way. And she ended up having a $15,000 launch. She filled out her program.
Damn.
She was excited. She didn't even know half of them a week before. Like it was crazy.
Yeah.
And so it was cool to see the shift from, well, I don't know, like she was, the conditioning and like wanting things to work. It's cool to see her go from that to, fuck it, I'm just going to do it my way, and I'm just going to listen to my intuition and like just see what happens, and to have her experience that shift. So that was really cool. I've also had people at the beginning of their journey. I know someone else that was in the last round of Star Power. She wanted to start a podcast for a really long time, and she finally was like, you know what, I'm gonna just put myself out. She went from like getting in her head to letting all the doubts take over of like, you know, who am I to do this? Like, is anyone gonna even care? To launching her podcast, receiving like amazing reviews from people, and being really excited about what is next. There is a shift that happens when people like, when it clicks.
I feel like
seen your shift.
Yeah.
When you stepped into your, you call it like your
CEO energy,
which is similar but different.
That's just the next level identity.
Yeah.
But I feel like what you were talking about with like it clicks. It's like having those moments where it's like when you're first starting, there's gonna be some time where it's like you're kind of going through the same thing, and then suddenly it just drops in. Like it clicks into place, and then it's like boom, 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 boom. At least that's what I've, based on what you were even saying, and that's what I've experienced too. It's just, there's a moment where it's like, oh, it all makes sense and it works and it just flows. It's like that identity finally clicks into place or something.
Yeah, it clicks into place, and also, and speaking from experience, you were still human, and sometimes you might have those moments where the doubts creep in, or the fear comes up, or you're leaning into another edge. And I'm so grateful for all my experiences, because I feel like it's it really molded me to be able to share all of this. But like, it's important how we navigate those spaces.
Yeah.
Like, you could still be embodied in your star power or your CEO energy and have that stuff come up and navigate that shit like a boss, and navigate it with love, and not like spiral and
or like a year long of it versus like, oh no, it was a week this time. Versus
and it's
like,
okay to go in those spaces. Like I have breakdowns every now and again, but like it's much faster to move through things now versus in the past. And I think that comes from emotional intelligence and just self-awareness, really.
Yeah. Well, I think also you mentioned, you know, and something I know from knowing you for so long is you're really good about facilitating those changes. It's not just like, let's talk about it and let's like, I'm going to do this like one quantum timeline journey and then we're just going to talk. Like, for example, I know, and I would love to hear more about, you know, some other examples of this is you had like one client who wanted to embody her next level, her star power. And she was like, I really want to get on a podcast. And you're like, great, we're going to record the podcast. Like, we're going to do the thing together. And so I would love to hear about like other examples, if you have them, of that, because I think that is such a great like integration aspect of the work that you do. Like, even when you and I are like, you know, hanging out and we're just talking about things, you're like, yeah, let's just sit down and do it. Or like, you know, when I first started recording, you're like, I'll record with you, like, we'll to get the flow moving. And then it's like they take off like a shooting star. Like,
well, thanks for recognizing that, because like I didn't even think about that. Yeah, I think that's actually a really good point. I find that some people do need that support and accountability. I offer accountability, really. Yeah. It's really accountability. The client that you're bringing up, Taylor, the other Taylor, that we did the podcast, it was just like an intuitive thing to just record it in the moment, because she did it in person weekend. And she's been talking about this podcast forever. So I'm like, all right, like,
let's go.
You've been saying you're going to record it like a month or two before you came here, and you still didn't start it. We're recording it. So we actually recorded 3 episodes. But like in my other spaces online, like the integration work is very unique actually for each individual. Yeah. It went in certain containers, of course, like where that allows. But I think that it's an accountability piece, and just like I intuitively know certain things to share with people that they should do for themselves that will support them in taking off. I can't control if they actually do it unless like you're here and we hit record, but I think that's really what that is. And it can look a lot of different ways. It can look like, you know, someone struggling with some imposter syndrome stuff, and me challenging them to do a live video, or, you know,
Yeah.
or challenging them to just record a video for themselves at first to like get in the flow. It could be a multitude of things. It could be just like another client comes to mind of she would always get in her head about when she would share her offers and the way that it came out. And she felt like she was coming from like this wonky, wobbly energy that wasn't like, you know. And so I just asked her a bunch of questions, or I sent her a bunch of questions to prompt her to shift her energy. Like, what would make this more fun? Or what do your clients need to know? If you knew that like 20 of the people that are meant to be in your program are listening to you right now, what do you want to say to them? Like, and like getting her energy back in alignment with being of serving from abundance versus from serving from like lack or ego. And even just questions like that and prompts like that are really helpful. It's
like serving from star power versus from a B-list actor, for lack of a better term. It's like, no, you're Madonna. Act like Madonna, like that type of thing.
Yeah.
That's great. Well, is there anything with like star power that you want to mention or talk about? Like, I know you've ran this before. Were there any like big wins that you're really proud of, or anything specific that you're really excited about?
I'm just really excited about it in general, because I feel like when I first had the download for star power, I knew, and I think I told you pretty quickly, right when I was like, I don't know what this is exactly going to be fully, but it's the thing.
Yeah.
And I had this whole download for it, and I was like, this is the thing. This is my thing, because it is like the embodiment of everything that I've been through and my work and what I teach. And of course, like there's other things, but I'm just really excited to bring more people through it, to elevate their message, to support them in being seen and blowing up, and like going bigger with their work and their message in a way that finally feels congruent with who they are, in alignment with their design, and just so that they could feel lit up on the inside and not be spiraling into the doubts or the fears or the whatever.
Yeah.
And when we embody our star power, we're literally magnetic. Like, it's just our innate magnetism. And people that have gone through it have launched podcasts, launched their programs, you know, manifested new house. Like, there's one, filled out their retreats, finally started having people reach out to them, like, saying that they feel their energy. I literally just people reaching out saying, wow, I feel your energy. Like, it's so powerful. Like, and so it just really shifts a lot in all areas of life. Just like from being embodied in your power. And it's funny. It's really funny. My first ever program, very first ever. I'm talking, I just started my Facebook group. I didn't know what the hell I was doing. And I privately messaged 10 people I connected with, I had a connection with. My first program was called Personal Power Project.
The good old days.
And I remember I had 10 people in the beta. It was so funny. And like, that was before my Facebook group blew up and everything, before I was like on my own. And it's kind of funny to see it come full circle, where I'm still teaching and talking and supporting people with the same freaking thing. But it's this star power, is a lot of it is through the lens of your business and your message, but it's really like you being embodied in your power.
And it's fun too. And like, there's lots of fun in there.
Yeah.
Right?
Of course.
Yeah, I mean, come on.
That's the whole point.
It's a vibe.
Yeah.
Okay. Was there anything else that you want to share or touch on before we sign off?
No, I think that's it. Okay. Join Star Power. If you want to be seen, blow up, and take your gifts and your work to the next level, this is literally where it's at.
Seen.